us, but I'm going to kick things off with our opening remarks. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, yep. Okay, great. Well, welcome everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. My name is Christy Simon. I'm the president and CEO of the Central Maryland Chamber. We appreciate you joining us this morning for this very special event, our Fort Meade update with Garrison Commander Colonel Christopher Nyland. We are looking forward to a great program. As you probably know, Fort Meade is located right in the middle of the Chamber's territory, and our office in Odenton is right outside the gates of Fort Meade. The Chamber has an incredibly active military affairs committee led by our amazing committee chair, Lynn Nichols. A little feedback there. This group of volunteers works to support the fort's personnel and military families through service projects and information sharing. The Chamber also has a seat on the Fort Meade Community Covenant Council, a group that meets monthly to support the efforts and the needs of those at Fort Meade. Fort Meade is the state's largest employer, and so many of our local businesses also have contracts with the fort to support their activities. We are so fortunate to have them here, right here in our backyard, and we're looking forward to hearing more from Colonel Nyland today about all that's new and exciting for 2021. If you have any questions throughout the program, you can go ahead and add them in the chat box, or you can also save them until the end. We will have time for Q&A a little later in the program. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our honored guest for today's presentation. Colonel Chris Nyland is from Seattle, Washington. He graduated from the University of Washington and was commissioned a second lieutenant in the infantry in 1997. Since then, Colonel Nyland has served around the world, including Bosnia, Afghanistan, and Iraq. Colonel Nyland's most recent operational assignment was a 3-year tour in the Republic of Korea, where he commanded the United Nations Command Security Battalion Joint Security Area. Following command, he served as the Deputy Commander of the 1st Armored Brigade Combat Team, 1st Cavalry Division, and 1st Armored Brigade Combat Team, 1st Infantry Division during their rotations to Korea. Following his return from Korea, Colonel Nyland completed a Master of Science degree in National Research Strategy with a concentration in Supply Chain Management from the Eisenhower School, National Defense University. His research was focused around China, artificial intelligence, and human-machine teaming, and sustainment in contested environments. Prior to becoming Fort Meade Garrison Commander, Colonel Nyland served as the Military Deputy to the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Manpower and Reserve Affairs at the Pentagon. Colonel Nyland is a graduate of the U.S. Army Ranger School, Airborne School, Air Assault School, Military Free Fall School, Military Free Fall Jump Master School, Reconnaissance and Surveillance Leaders Course, and the Infantry Mortar Leaders Course, and the 82nd Airborne Division Jump Master Course. Colonel Nyland is married to the former Ms. Christy Hill of New Orleans, Louisiana. Colonel Christy Nyland currently serves in the Army G2, and they've been married for 19 years. So welcome to Colonel Nyland, and thank you so much for being here with us today.
Well, first, thank you so much for having me. This is I was really excited to be able to do this. I mean, the Central Maryland team, the Central Maryland Chamber, and the whole entire Central Maryland team has just been so welcoming to me and my family since we arrived here at Fort Meade, and it's always a great opportunity to get out and see the faces and talk to everyone. So, I appreciate the introduction. It was very nice. You know, one of the first things I always think about when I hear that sitting where I am now is, you know, what did all that do to prepare someone to run a small city? And you know, one of the things that I find myself consistently falling back on is the leadership lessons I've learned through the years. And what I've found is, thankfully, you know, people are people, whether you wear a uniform, whether you don't, and you know, understanding how to organize and lead a group of people kind of applies no matter where you're at. And that's been one of my true privileges in joining the Fort Meade team here. Is we've got such an outstanding team, not only in the garrison, but in the communities, and as I've started referring to it, in the community of communities that we're a part of. It's just been a real pleasure. So thank you for having me today. I do have a few things. It's very hard to get a military person to talk without them reverting back to looking at some slides. So I've got a few slides I want to kind of run through to go over. And if you'll ignore the ugly guy in the center there, he's bookended by two pretty outstanding folks that are part of your team here, Christy and Lynn. And this photo was taken right after the Department of the Army awarded the team here with the Army Partnership Award for 2020. And so that speaks directly to the work of the Central Maryland Chamber and Lynn and her team in the Military Affairs Committee. We were incredibly proud to not only nominate our partnership, but that we were selected amongst all partnerships in the entire United States Army to receive this award. So thanks for everything you have done. And continue to do. And that was a real awesome moment that happened just last month. So next slide, Sherry. So this is kind of a slide. So if you participate in any of the other community forums that the Garrison participates in, you may have seen this slide or you may have heard portions of this pitch before, but this is kind of where I start from anytime I'm talking with our partners. And this is kind of one of the classic military, everything on one slide. So where I'd really like to focus everyone's initial attention is right there in the center. Annually, the Garrison works with our senior commander, Major General Jones, from the Military District of Washington, to really set the priorities for the year. And for FY21, this is the list of priorities we came up with General Jones. First and foremost, we've got a number, as all of you know, we've got a number of critical national security missions that occur within the confines of the post, and being able to protect the force both from a security perspective, but also from a health perspective is absolutely vital in order to enable those organizations to continue their missions. And obviously, the health protection is seriously challenging us over last year and continues to challenge us this year. Just as a real quick status update with regard to how we see the COVID situation here at Fort Meade. Thankfully, we've weathered a number of very challenging months, and I think most of you have seen that also. We are absolutely encouraged by the fact that the case rates and the infection numbers have really returned to pre-fall numbers. I'd say we're sitting very close to where we were in early fall of last year. And really, we examined the 5 surrounding counties surrounding Fort Meade. And then on top of that, we're in the middle of vaccination distribution, which is just it really encourages me as a person in addition to a leader. And the state seems to be doing a great job with distribution across the state, and we are distributing vaccine here on the installation for our workforce as it's allocated to us by the Department of Defense. So, as you know, the vast majority of vaccine is going out to the states. DoD is getting some small portion of that, and we are distributing that as rapidly as possible. But really, our limb fact here on post is not our ability to distribute it. It's how much we've received. Because of that, we've prioritized our vaccine distribution. First and foremost was all of our emergency workers, so the folks who worked in the hospital, police, fire, those type of employees. And then we got into a second category where we're starting to look at we're vaccinating all of our over 75 population. They're a number one priority. and then going to our national mission force population. So, for example, those folks in the NSA and Cybercom. And now we've started to vaccinate what we're calling our essential workers, those workers who spend the majority of their day at work, physically present and in regular contact with the community. So if you think about the exchange workers or the commissary workers, the childcare employees, strangely enough, the ID card section, they spend all day in interacting with the public. And so that's the phase we're in with vaccine right now. And really there's about, once we get done with the essential workers, we'll continue to look at the rest of the national, what we call the mission assurance force. And that group is about 15,000 people. And once we get through that group here on the installation, we'll begin vaccinating the over 65 population, and then the remainder of the military organizations that have a national presence. The other big thing going on with health protection right now is we've had a number of changes in civilian leadership, not only in the White House but in the Pentagon, and the civilian leadership upon taking the reins have put out a number of directives focused on the federal workforce and safety measures that they've put in place. So, for example, the presidential mask mandate has gone into effect, and we're still waiting for Department of Defense guidance. We're anticipating it this week or next week for protecting the workforce, how many employees we can have in the workplace at one time. So we're monitoring that very closely right now. We've largely held where we were, and I'll be honest, we have been very slow to reopen services on the installation following the winter surge, because we want to make sure that we're clearly within not only the president but the new Secretary of Defense's intent, and part of their intent with, for example, the mask mandate, is to make sure the military is doing its part to set the example for the local populations in what right looks like, as far as the big things that we can do in order to mitigate the spread. Mask wear, or physical distancing, hygiene, and then taking the vaccine when and where when it's offered to you. So we'll be seeing, we're going to be closely continuing to monitor not only the leadership directives, but also the local conditions on here. But I anticipate what you will continue to see on Fort Meade for the foreseeable future is a very, very, very slow process of getting back to normal. I do not anticipate that we're going to see broad movement towards normality for at least a few months. Recently, the Army Public Health Command came out with a consideration for leaders that we should look to move to our next health protection condition, Alpha, when we get to a case rate of 5 over 100,000. Right now, we're sitting at about 17 over 100,000, and the lowest we saw, even when we were getting ready to, even at the best part of last fall, was about 12. So it's going to be a while before we get back to what I would call normal here on the post. Obviously, we don't have to deal with some of the financial and economic considerations that the local political leadership does. But that is a factor in some of our decision making. But we are laser focused towards keeping our employees protected while they're here at work. So that's really, when you really break it down, if you ask what's my number one priority, it sits right there in protecting that force. And right now it manifests itself in vaccination distribution. Is really our primary focus right there. Going back to the center there, when you look at General Jones's priorities from where he sits, we play, the Fort Meade community plays a critical role in supporting his requirements to protect, to support the protection of the defense of the homeland, and that manifests itself in a myriad of different ways. There were uniformed members of the service here at Fort Meade that deployed down to the Capitol for the inauguration. We had a number of service members that were operating in different capacities down there to ensure the peaceful transition of power. And really, we have to be prepared, in the event of further disruptions to the process down there or further security risks. Largely, though, that is us provisioning logistics. So we could potentially be bedding down service members that National Guards members that serve someplace else, fueling trucks, doing that kind of thing. But that mission has elevated in importance over the past couple of years due to some of the challenges the nation's faced over that same time frame. Our third priority is, we call it House to Support the Defenders and the Family. That's really about the housing campaign for both the privatized housing and also the barracks. And then that's everything else we do in order to support our families, things like childcare, military spouse employment, and that entire piece. I'm happy to say that the housing campaign, while it continues to move forward, I feel, and my leadership agrees, is that we've really transitioned out of what we call the crisis phase, where we're responding to immediate life, health, and safety issues. And we've really transitioned into a phase where we're trying to rebuild the trust with our residents in their housing and in the leadership. I just finished up my most recent housing town hall, and I'll be honest, I was very happy, because while we had a lot of engagement from our residents, most of the engagement, it sounded more like a homeowners association meeting than a housing crisis. We had a lot of concerns about the upkeep of the sidewalks or the safety of the playgrounds or some of those things, and much fewer concerns about the conditions inside homes. And even some of those concerns were primarily involved around some timeliness of getting of working off work orders, which is important. But this isn't about major mold issues like was reported back in 2019. We've nearly completed, and we anticipate completing all the mold remediation work by the end of the summer. We're about at 85% complete right now, so that's a good news story. With regard to barracks, we're in the middle of a project of renovating all of the barracks on the NSA and compound. And then we will shortly begin building a new barracks complex here on the main post side. But ultimately, we're not increasing our barracks capacity at all. So you're going to continue to see a significant portion of our junior enlisted military population continuing to live off post in the surrounding communities. While there are advantages and disadvantages to that, I know from a business perspective, it's often seen as a positive. There are some challenges to that from a military perspective, as you have these young adults transitioning from their largely transitioning from their parents' homes into real adulthood. And we always prefer to keep them in a little bit of a controlled environment where we can help them make that transition. But we do not see in the foreseeable future any increase to our barracks capacity here on post. I am excited. On the 1st of May, we anticipate reopening one of our CDCs that have been closed for renovations. So we'll see some increase in CDC capacity on the 1st of May. But we are still going to continue to rely on the surrounding community for a good portion of our childcare needs. I my best estimate is probably over 50% of our childcare needs are being provided for off post. I was very encouraged by some of the recent movement in the state to target some economic recovery efforts towards the childcare community, and I see that as a real positive step forward to ensuring that we're going to be able to continue to meet the childcare needs of really of everyone's workforce as we potentially begin a phase of bringing more people back into work, as we see that light at the end of the tunnel coming with regard to the COVID precautions. And then finally, probably most important for this group is our fourth priority, and that's making sure we're ready for the future. Two primary things that I talk about with readiness for the future, and one is from where I sit, the future of Fort Meade is continued growth. I talk about it quite a bit. Just in my time here on the installation, we went through and refreshed our census numbers. And many of you probably remember we used to use the metric. We had about 56,000 employees here on post. Well, on our most recent refresh of our census population, that number now is about 63,000. And I think next quarter, we're going to see another 4,000 personnel bump to that number based on how we're accounting for some of the contractors. So I actually think that number is closer to 67,000. That growth has really occurred for the most part over the past 5 years or so. And that comes from a lot of small units adding additional people into their workforce. I was just at a conversation yesterday with the Defense Media Activity, and they're going to be consolidating a number of their sites. They're going to in the next year or two, they're going to be moving people up from one of their Atlanta places, and they're going to be moving people from California and consolidating some of their work here on Fort Meade. So, and you're seeing more and more moves like that where organizations are consolidating efforts and moving people to Fort Meade. We anticipate at least 3,600 employee real growth over the next 8 years, and as other organizations continue to move on to Fort Meade, and that's net, because that also accounts for those organizations that may be shutting their doors or moving off post. But I think the message to the Central Maryland Chamber is this post plays a very important role in DoD's vision for the future. And I anticipate you will continue to see growth in missions and employees at a minimum for the next decade, but I can't imagine that significantly changing going into the future. If we can go to the next slide, please. Along with that growth, you're going to see some significant actions occur over the next 10 years as the NSA completes what they call their East Campus expansion. And the major part of that effort is creating 10,000 new workspaces on the installation here behind the fence. And what they intend to do during that time is take the people who are currently working, many of their people that are currently working in office parks in the surrounding community, and starting to bring them back to work right here on Fort Meade. There's a number of our community partners, along with both state and federal legislators, have done an amazing job helping us solve some of the traffic problems we've had over the past 10 years. And you're finally seeing a lot of those come to fruition as we see the work out on 175 finish and a number of those actions. Unfortunately, the story I'm here to tell a little bit is we're going to, over the next 10 years, we're going to continue to make the problem that was just solved, we're going to make it worse again. As you see 10,000 people that were commuting to office parks in the area start to come onto post here. Some of the things that we're doing to try to help that is we're continuing to renovate and update our access control points, or our gates. You should see, most of you are probably familiar, or at least seen that we recently reopened our Mapes and 175 gate. That is the new main gate here on post, and that is really our only gate here on post that is constructed to the Army standard. As you can see, it has it has a very large serpentine. It can handle a large amount of traffic coming through it, and the way it's designed, it's really designed to handle any backlog of traffic onto the installation rather than pushing that onto 175. Within the next month, by the end of March, we fully anticipate that we're going to have the Rockenbach ACP, which is that far northern green dot, reopened. But what we're going to do very rapidly after reopening Rockenbach is we're going to close the Reese ACP. So the gate that basically is on 175 that Reese Road runs directly into, really coming from Maryland 100 and off towards Glen Burnie. That we're going to close that gate. So what that's going to cause is those folks that commute in from those areas, once they get to the intersection of Reese and 175, are either going to have to turn north to go through the Rockenbach gate, or turn south to go through the Mapes 175 gate. The whole reason why we're closing Reese is so that we can bring it up to the same standard as the Mapes 175 gate. So it's going to be a little bit of it's an investment, and it's going to be I anticipate a couple of years to bring that back up to the standard. But once it reopens, again, it'll have those same features that you have at the Mapes 175 gate, and will provide a better traffic pattern overall. Additionally, we're planning to expand some of the roads here on post. Primarily the road, Cooper Road, the primary road that runs in front of DISA, connects Rockenbach to Mapes. That road right now is a 2-lane road. We're looking to expand that out to a 4-lane road. It was previously programmed in the NDAA, but that money got deferred for other administration priorities. However, those, with the work stopping on the southern border wall, we've seen positive indications right now that we should see that money coming back. And we've really got the project on the shelf right now, and look to be funding that here as soon as that money becomes available. And then finally, the last gate that we haven't addressed yet is the Mapes West ACP. So that's the gate that comes off of 32. We do intend to upgrade that in the future. However, it has to go through the Army budget cycle, and so that may take quite a while before we see movement for that. I'll just pause there real quick. I see a hand up, and I'm happy to answer questions en route. So I see Mary. Did you have a question I can answer? Mary, if you're trying to talk, we can't hear you. Okay, might have just been a misfire. So really, and I've been telling just about any of our local partners that are willing to listen. But as I mentioned, I anticipate that you're going to see just as we kind of solve the issues over the past few years, you're going to see an increase in traffic issues, around the post as the East Campus expansion comes online and we start to move those employees back onto post. And we're looking for opportunities to work with the local community to defray some of those issues. Move on to the next slide real quick. I mentioned earlier spouse employment. We're embarking on as most of you know, spouse employment is a long-held DoD priority, and it's also one of the Army quality of life initiatives. We're starting to take some baby steps on an initiative, initially working with the Anne Arundel and Howard County Workforce Development Corporations, and connecting them with some of our agencies here on post that work on not only spouse employment but also work on transition assistance for service members. We see there's a lot of opportunity in this space to really help connect employers with job seekers. Not only connecting military affiliated folks with work either in the surrounding community, but a lot of potential with connecting civilians with work that may occur right here on Fort Meade. A lot of exciting ideas in this space right now. If you look at our military spouse population, you can see down there in the bottom right, it is a very educated population, and they spend and their biggest challenge is, with as much as they move around, having to consistently go through that job seeking behavior, as I'm sure many of you know, that can take anywhere from 1 to 6 months on a good stretch. And then they get a year or two worth of work, and then they potentially end up getting new assignment instructions and moving on. So it can be very challenging for that population. So the state has participates in a number of great of efforts and compacts in order to enable some of those licensed professionals to transition their credentials rapidly into the state of Maryland. But we just think that there's more that we as an installation can do to help connect those military spouses that are seeking employment with potential employers. And as we continue to move down the road on this initiative, there's going to be a lot of opportunities with organizations such as this and your membership to be involved if you're interested. Similarly, next slide, please. One of the things that we're really excited about, we're really excited about just about everything, to be honest, but one of the other things that I'd like to highlight for the team here is the renovation work that's begun out at Fort Meade High. So this is a multi-year effort, and we expect completion of this work in 2024. But there's a long history of work that predates me by quite a bit, that was done with the Anne Arundel County Public Schools, connecting them with federal grant money out of the Office of Economic Adjustments. And we got a very large grant to do a complete renovation of Meade High. And really, we see this as an opportunity to kind of rebrand the Meade cluster of schools. At least, I've got friends who've lived in Columbia for their entire lives, and for the longest time that they remember, Fort Meade High specifically has had a little bit of a reputation, and not a positive one. And unfortunately, when military members get assigned to the installation, if they have school-age children, one of the first things they do is they'll Google the schools here, and they see that story told out in Google. And to be honest, there's a lot of great work going on over there in the school. The leadership is fantastic, and I don't know if the story that's being told is completely fair to the school system. And so what we're hoping to do is leverage this renovation in order to help rebrand the school. And so we're looking forward to opportunities to work with interested parties to really help us change the narrative for the school. And we're doing and we've got a number of initiatives on our point to help partner with the school leadership to get our service members more involved in the schools, to connect the schools with other assets that we have at our fingertips. I would love to see, as many of you know, the Army Field Band sits here on post, and a lot of those service members spend their entire career here. And when they decide to retire, many of them retire in the local community. And so there's a very strong alumni program from the field band here in the Meade surrounding area. And what we'd love to see is things like connecting that alumni program into the music programs into the school to help bring up the, to help build up the music programs. And so we're looking at a number of things like that in general, just to help tell the story, to tell the Mustang story. And give them a fair shake, and that really helps encourage, not only employees but military service members to live and work in the surrounding area, And I can never talk about Meade High without talking about Drake Smith there, who's a senior at Meade High, and he's actually the student representative on the Anne Arundel County Public School Board. Just an incredible young man. I just met with him recently. He's got some great ideas in this space. He's very proud of his school, and it's just been really fun working with him and bouncing some ideas off of him on the way forward with regard to not just Meade High but the entire Meade school cluster. And really, those are the primary things I wanted to hit. I am absolutely, Sherry, if we can go to the last slide, I'm absolutely here to answer any questions or to have any discussions anyone would like, and I'll stop talking for a few minutes and see what we got out there.
Great, thanks, Colonel Nyland. If any of you have questions, you can feel free to unmute yourselves and go ahead and ask. Lynn, I think your hand is raised.
Yes, it is. Colonel Nyland, you said that we have people coming in from Atlanta, and there was another city that you had said.
I don't remember the name of the city off the top of my head, but it's California. Is DMA is consolidating some folks from facilities they have in those two areas.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm trying to keep my eyes out for raised hands, but if you have a question, you can feel free to unmute yourself and ask now.
See, the ego in me just says, well, that means I told the story perfectly and there can't be any possible questions because I've answered them all en route. But I know the truth. Most people just need the dam to break a little bit.
Colonel, you mentioned that there would be 4,000 more employees based on your census count. Did you say in the next quarter?
Yes, I did, John. But I will tell you, all the numbers that I've been talking about, the move from 56 to 63 and really the move from 63 to 67 is really all about catching up to what actually is already here on post. It's just accurately reflecting where we are now. When I start talking about real growth, that's the additional 4,000 I see coming in between now and 2008 as organizations either consolidate their work to Fort Meade or new organizations move on to Fort Meade. Does that make sense?
Thank you. That makes perfect sense. Thank you, sir.
Okay, Adrienne.
Hi, I work for BWI Airport, and I know that the military tends to do a lot of travel with permanent change of duty stations, TDY, and I just wondered, what is the military doing right now with travel of service members?
No, that's a great question. So, by and large, right now, we are continuing to permanently change stations as we would normally do. The last year saw, normally we move in two big time periods. We have a very large summer move cycle that runs from about April, May through August or so. And then we have a much smaller move cycle in the winter into the December, January period. Last year was strange because we initially went into the stop movement, and then as the restrictions were slowly lifted, what you saw almost a continuous move period, really all the way out through this month. So there was really a slow kind of a slow burn on our move cycles last year. This year, we anticipate it's going to be very close to normal as the assignment instructions have already started going out. And we anticipate as early as next month starting to see a surge in our travel office as people arrange to move to their next duty assignments. Which that's one of the Army quality of life initiatives is making it easier for our service members to PCS between stations, and part of that is getting them assignment instructions as early as possible with a goal of 6 months prior to move. So that's the first piece. With regard to what we call TDY or temporary duty, or for example, if I led an organization that had people in multiple places, me going out to visit them or to go to a conference or something like that, you're still seeing very significant restrictions in place with regard to temporary travel. I'll be honest, I don't, I could give you what my opinion is, but I do not think that we'll see significant temporary travel until we get much closer to HPCon Alpha, kind of the getting back to normal thing, because that's part of the reason why we've made a deliberate effort to restrict travel, is because we don't want our service members to be, how I refer to it, as contagion vectors. We don't want our service members to potentially take the virus into places where it currently isn't, or there might be a lower rate. So I don't anticipate that changing in the near term.
Okay, great. And I just want to make sure everybody on the call knows, BWI, we feel strongly that we take care of the military better than any airport across the United States. We have